Also, Rockaway is giving gin and tonic at their staking bar. And speaking of staking in liquids, next up, we are going to have a panel about the latest in liquid staking. So please give a warm welcome to co-founder of Angel 42, Saul Hudson.
Thank you. Hi there. It's wonderful to see so many of you here. This event has obviously highlighted all the passion that there is for the Cosmos community, and I really like that as we get into details here, we're going to be talking about DeFi, liquid staking. You know, there's real curiosity about what the future of this will be in this particular ecosystem. So I'm Saul Hudson, and I'm the co-founder of Angle 42. We're a Web3 PR agency, but this allows me to go back to my former life when I was a journalist. I get to ask the questions today as the moderator, and it's a real privilege to be able to pose the questions to our panel because we have quite a mix. We're going to have different perspectives on the DeFi space and particularly on liquid staking. So help me please welcome onto the stage our panelists. We have from Rockaway, from the investment side of things, we have Tomas Fanta, providing a staking solution with the liquid staking hub. From Persistence, we have Jerome Develta. And then another perspective, from the use case side of things, we have from Nolus, we have Carmen Trendafilov.
Hey, guys.
So I think it is important, because we're going into this narrow focus, to make sure that we set the tables here and just understand the context of basically what liquid staking is, and particularly what liquid staking is in Cosmos. So I wonder, Tomas, if I can ask you first just to lay out that context so that then we can get further into it.
Absolutely. No, thank you. And great to be here. Hi, everyone. So, when we talk about liquid staking, the way I think about it is it's really a way to unlock an inefficient capital. In proof-of-stake blockchains, you ensure security by having people lock up their capital with validators, either single one or a set of validators. And you really want that. It's like a key essential aspect of proof-of-stake blockchains. You want to have as much capital locked up so that you can kind of avoid the economic attack on the network, which would obviously bring the network down. But that obviously poses a threat to, or not a threat, but more of an inconvenience to users because they cannot really go ahead and use their capital somewhere else. And so what liquid staking providers do, they just come into the space and offer the users like a separate way of looking up their capital. They say, instead of looking up the capital directly on a validator, just go ahead and look it up with me, and I'm going to give you a derivative back that you can use. I think liquid staking providers are really using or offering three key features. One of them is issuing this new derivative token that is backed by the original token that is locked up and securing the networks. And you can go ahead and kind of just use it across DeFi ecosystems or anywhere else you want. And you're really unlocking this huge amount of liquidity that otherwise would be just sitting idly on the system. But I think the second two features that are really common in liquid staking protocols, there's one that's the convenience for users, and like a diversification aspect, where if you look up through a liquid staking provider, they usually just spread out the stake across a number of validators rather than a user having to go and pick every single validator themselves where they want to look up the capital, which obviously they can. It's just inconvenient. And then they have to do their own research on who to trust, who not to trust. While here, you kind of just have to trust that one liquid staking provider, that they're doing the best job of spreading out the stake. And then the second, and that's I think a direct benefit to the user. And then a third aspect or feature that I think liquid staking providers are offering is oftentimes what they're trying to do is overweight the stake that gets placed on large validators in the system, underweight the stake that's placed on the large validators in the system, and overweight the smaller ones, so that you can really decentralize the network a little bit more, and help kind of maximize the number of entities you would need colluding to take down or take over the network. And I think that is not a direct benefit for the user, but kind of like an indirect one where if there is a collusion, obviously at some point the network's going to go down. You cannot grow a beautiful ecosystem on top of it. So I really think like that's a key feature that the liquid staking providers are doing.
Great, thanks, Thomas. As I said, we have the different perspectives up here on liquid staking. So I think it's actually important to just understand what your roles are in this area, what it is that you specifically do, so that we have the context for where your perspective's coming from. So, Jerome, persistence, explain to us what persistence is up to.
Yeah, sure. So with persistence, we're actually an app chain focused on liquid staking DeFi, and it's a lot of like hype words in one sentence. But basically, what we try to do is to not only do the issuance of the liquid staked assets, such as most regular liquid staking providers, we try to really have that ecosystem on the chain, which is focused around DeFi use cases. And enabling DeFi basically with the liquidity that is unlocked by actually having liquid stake tokens, because you can do the issuance of the tokens. But then again, like if you're not doing anything with those liquid stake tokens, then you're as far off as you were before. And that's where use cases make like the next step in this story. And for us, what we try to do is like we provide on the chain the building blocks of that, like really the big DeFi primitives. So with on persistence, which is the chain, we have one protocol called pStake. pStake does the issuance of the liquid staked assets, not only within Cosmos, but also outside of that. There is a DEX, it's called Dexter. They focus on like trading of liquid staked assets. So it's a DEX, but with a specific focus on trading those assets and any like yield generating assets. And then still in the works is a money market, like a borrowing lending protocol in which liquid staked assets can be collateralized to then borrow against and kind of leverage up. And then that opens up a whole lot of like interesting use cases, which don't necessarily need to be built on top of persistence, but we do have Cosmosm enabled, so people can actually come in and build those things. But through IBC and ICA and things like that, also have a lot of opportunities to integrate with various protocols to make sure that the liquidity that is unlocked is like put to good use across DeFi. And I truly think, like, I mean, a lot of the things that you said are true. Like, those are like really good advantages of liquid staking. One thing that I really like to think of is, for me, liquid staking is just an enabler. Actually, it's the biggest enabler that we'll see in DeFi. On the Cosmos side, still has been relatively low. So I think for Cosmos, liquid staking is actually huge, because so many people have always like staked. I think Cosmos in general is like proof of stake, and a lot of people have always done staking. But it has hurt the DeFi side of things a little bit, because there was not a lot of liquidity, I think, on the DeFi side. So yeah, that's what we're trying to solve with persistence, and yeah, going great so far.
Great, thank you, Jerome, and we'll get more into the specifics around Cosmos. But as you say, the next part of the story is the use case, and you yourselves, you're looking forward at money markets. That's where you come in. And can you tell us, Carmen, a little bit about Nolus?
Sure. So Nolus is a money market app chain that is built exactly for connecting different participants. So lenders are able to provide stable coins. Borrowers are taking a product that's called a DeFi lease. This DeFi lease actually is a better lending product that tries to solve different inefficiencies. Those inefficiencies are over-collateralized lending, risk of liquidations, lack of actual ownership of the asset. So basically, a borrower provides a down payment, gets 150% more exposure. Once it does that, he purchases the asset he wants to purchase, fix the price. all the appreciation is up to him. So as a borrower, he gets more exposure at lower liquidation risk, and then he owns the asset. So he can do with it different yield optimization strategies. And this is where liquid staking derivatives actually come to play, because this is the moment that you can use that liquid stake derivative that's already earning you rewards in order to amplify it through the upchain, our money market. And you get more exposure. You're still not exposed to large over-collateralization. You're actually decreasing it. And you get lower risk. So liquid staking derivatives we're more like the first cornerstone case of using such LCDs in the money markets.
Terrific. Okay, and from the investment perspective, what is it that Rockaway is interested in? Why are you, sorry to put you on the spot, but why are you on this panel then?
It's a fair question. No. I think how you put it, like it's an enabler, right? And I absolutely agree with it. Like DeFi has been struggling here and there with liquidity, and obviously our DeFi protocols need that liquidity to kind of flourish. And just having so much capital locked up on site and not being able to utilize it, that's a big issue. And especially in Cosmos, right? Like there's the amount of capital that's just locked up in like, in the hub, like Cosmos Hub, it's incredible. And I get why people like it, because generally the staking rewards within Cosmos are a little bit higher than you can get in other ecosystems. But having that enable lets you keep that juicy yield and secure the networks while also going outside and utilizing it everywhere else within DeFi. I think that's what's exciting about liquid staking. That's why we are looking into the space.
Okay, so that's why Rockaway is having a look. But let's talk more about the specifics around Cosmos, and what are looking at the positives, what are the benefits that you get with Cosmos and liquid staking that maybe you don't get elsewhere? I mean, Jerome, you've chosen the liquid staking hub here, so why is the focus on Cosmos?
I mean, our focus on Cosmos is mostly, I think, for the tech itself. Like what the tech stack enables is amazing, and just IBC itself is super powerful. I mean, I think liquid staking in Cosmos is a little bit specific. It's slightly different from what you see on other chains. I think on the Ethereum side, like liquid staking came for a reason, because once you stake, at some point you couldn't withdraw, and there were no withdrawals. So kind of liquid staking grew quite quickly there. Because of that, on the Cosmos side, as you mentioned, like staking rewards are quite high. So a lot of people are actually, just staking, and they don't really want to use their tokens anywhere else. But yeah, I think on the Cosmos side, like the reason we like to work within Cosmos is for like, I think the builder's mentality that's there is of course one, but also like the potential that liquid staking has in Cosmos, as I mentioned, like it's a huge enabler. And I think for us, that is one of the interesting parts. Maybe in other ecosystems, I mean, I don't really look at them in that close detail, but I do think the opportunity, relatively speaking, in the Cosmos might be bigger just because of the history with staking and like higher staking rewards and things like that. So that's why like we're in Cosmos. I mean, we're actually cross-chain with one of the protocols. Is actually cross-chain doing liquid staking for ETH and BNB as well. But yeah, our main focus is Cosmos.
And Tomas, then you do look across at the different ecosystems, but obviously Rockaway has a real interest in Cosmos. Hence, you're the great organizers of this event. So what's the perspective you give when you're comparing? How does Cosmos stand out to you?
No, I think Cosmos has like a perfect use case for liquid staking. It just because it's a number of sovereign chains, each having that native token, like unless you're go for like shed security and stuff like that, each kind of needing that stake to secure themselves. You don't have that in like other ecosystems that much. So here you really have the use case for like a huge number of different parties requiring or needing that liquid stake derivative, and I think that's exciting. And as you mentioned, like IBC, I think that's a big enabler as well for developers. Using interchain accounts, I think that is a huge thing. And I just like the mentality of how Cosmos, developers are thinking about this. Now the Cosmos Hub proposal, where they're kind of skipping the unbonding period when you want to go from staking to liquid staking, and you don't have to wait 21 days to just unlock so that you can do the same thing and just get the liquid staking derivative out of it. I think that's, you don't, I feel like you don't see that much in other chains there. It's just kind of like a new use case, but not as needed as it is in Cosmos. So I think
Right.
like that's why Cosmos is like a perfect thing for this.
Great. And Carmen, so why the focus for Nolus on Cosmos?
We actually chose Cosmos not because it's Cosmos, but because of the technology. The technology, and we heard a couple of keywords here from Jerome and Thomas, cross-chain, IBC interchain accounts. We are utilizing those for day one. So basically, you're using that technology not only to build Cosmos, but actually become cross-chain easily. So this is the future where we see Nolus being able to interact with any blockchain without the end user understanding that he's doing that. And from the outside, liquid stake derivatives outside of Cosmos, usually they're seen as the high yields. Yeah, those assets that have high yields. But once you have apps that actually use those derivatives and allows you to do transaction cross-chain, this is actually where adoption would also come from.
Right. And so looking out, where is Cosmos headed in terms of liquid staking? What have been the most notable developments? You were talking about the Cosmos Hub proposal. From your perspective, what is it that you've seen in the evolution of liquid staking in Cosmos that stood out?
I think we're still so early. Like when it comes to liquid staking in Cosmos, there's not a lot of liquid staked at the moment. Like if you look at the Cosmos Hub, even though there are, I think at least three players in the market that already have very nice products and decent traction and attention, there's only 1% of all Atom is liquid staked at this point, which is not a whole lot, right? And I think the developments that are being worked on will hopefully change that, because one of the thing you mentioned, I think the proposal you're referring to is the one around the liquid staking module, the LSM, which I think is, it's amazing. We actually did a workshop on it yesterday or 2 days ago, but it's basically, as you say, it's allowing people to go from a staked position to a liquid staked position without having to unbond and miss out on staking rewards for 21 days. So I do think, like liquid staking as an enabler, I do think the liquid staking module is like a very big enabler to kind of transition towards the adoption of liquid staking within the Cosmos ecosystem. And the goal of the liquid staking module, like developed by Occlusion, is to first of all bring that to the Cosmos Hub, but also to kind of bring that technology into the Cosmos SDK, which then can further be adopted by other chains to help that enable. Like we'll give an example for persistence, for example, right? Because we are actually already adopting it, like it's already on our testnet, and we're going to bring it to the mainnet soon. 80% of the token of persistence, XPRT, is actually staked. So that is actually a huge barrier to adoption for liquid staking of the liquid stake token, right? So it's one of these enablers, and all chains will have the same type of problem. So this LSM thing is a huge enabler for that, and we're really excited for it. Of course, it comes with a lot of things that need to be tested when it comes to security. There's a lot of risks that come with it. But I do think it's a way to kind of safely adopt more and more users into liquid staking, because it also has a few of these safety features. But that might take us too far, I guess, to kind of talk about these as well.
So adoption is important, and you can see ways that is getting easier, but it's always a challenge. I mean, from a use case perspective, you're aiming for adoption, you're facilitating adoption. What do you think the challenges are for us to get greater adoption in liquid staking in Cosmos?
Well, the first challenge was the technology that really needed to develop, and this is what I think in the past years Cosmos, the technology developed in a way that now it's sufficient to build on top of it and build app-specific chains that are really important to the adoption. UI is essential. People that are actually outside of Cosmos or even outside of crypto, if you want to attract them, you need to be really cross-chain. You really need to have a very simple product that's useful to them in every aspect. And actually they understand it. It might be, for example, our product is taken from the real world, a lease. If you take a DeFi lease, it's like taking a lease of a car. Everyone knows how to do that, right? So once you translate that into the real world, you have, into the blockchain from the real world, you have more options and availability to attract new users. And because the technology is there, you just build on top of it. And you build it to be consumer-centric.
Do you see any other challenges here for Tomas for adoption?
No, I think one thing is, I guess it's also because it's just Cosmos is still early, kind of the development phase, you know, and especially on the DeFi side. But you know, I think when you kind of decide to liquid stake, you take on, to a degree, an additional risk, right? Like yes, you diversify maybe across validators, but then you're taking on the risk of the protocol itself kind of going down, you know, the smart contract risk. And so you need to somehow compensate for it. You also need to compensate for the fees that are taken off of, you know, by the provider, off of like liquid or staking for you. So you need to generate this like additional yield to compensate you for that risk. And now when and it's not just like Cosmos's issue, I think it's kind of overall issue across the DeFi space. But right now it's very difficult to find, you know, sufficient yield that would actually compensate for the additional risk you're taking. And the use cases where you can actually go and you know, use your liquid staking token, it's limited. So I think another like unblocker, I guess, is going to be, you know, just really integrating the liquid staking tokens as much as possible, being able to offer it across, you know, different app chains, different apps. You know, whether from lending to you know, DEXs or whatnot, but it's still early and it's not there. So you know, in my view, like to really kind of increase the adoption, you need to show the users that that they can actually, you know, generate that additional yield, and they do want to hold that token, that derivative. Without it, it's not going to work.
So there's some bearish sentiment there, right? You know, which your own. This is where you play. You're one of the few players here. I imagine that you have a little bit more optimism about how people can be attracted to the liquid stake.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of course super optimistic about the future, and I do think like the technology is actually mostly there, I believe, and like a lot of the things are actually in place. I think for adoption. I think especially on like money markets or like borrowing lending, and to kind of enable leverage liquid staking and other use cases like this, maybe some of the details still need to be figured out around like price feeds of these liquid staked assets or oracles, things like that. It's not that simple. Those are quite complex problems to solve. Because also most of these liquid staked assets are not listed on any exchange, for example, or at least not on a centralized exchange. So it's hard to get those price feeds. And then if you don't get the right price feeds, how do you do liquidations if it's used as collateral? So all these things are like hard problems to solve, but it is solvable. And we've seen like protocols have been able to solve some of these things, right? So I'm actually quite optimistic. Like I think the infrastructure layer of liquid staking is there. And you've seen that with the various protocols that are actually doing the issuance of the assets. And now I think it's time to really up the game and kind of go to the next step, which is going all in on the integrations, the use cases. Because so far, I think most of the use cases for liquid stake tokens have been to kind of provide liquidity in a pool, which are most of the time incentivized. So it's not like real yield. So I think most of the networks are like the bigger tokens, at least kind of reviewing tokenomics, kind of bringing down inflation, but trying to bring in like real yield rather than inflationary yield is, I think, a step in the right direction. And then trying to kind of bring in more of these use cases going forward. Yeah, I mean, I'm super optimistic actually. Yeah, I think all the building blocks are there, or at least very close to kind of being completed. Yeah.
And Tomas, give us that perspective from the investor when you're looking at liquid staking. What is it that you look for? Is this, you know, when you assess the opportunity, what makes you decide that, okay, this is worth the investment, or actually this isn't?
So as you know, when we're investing as in any kind of investment opportunity, when you're looking at it, it's we always look for the return potential. And I love liquid staking in the sense that like I do think it's an enabler, and like you will need it, and it's it's unlocking, like it's a problem that needs solving, and like it is the solution to a problem. But what we've come across is it's really difficult to figure out an investment case for it. Or at least VC kind of investment case for it. Because when you look at the largest, liquid staking providers out there, like Lido, they have like 7 billion assets under management, and they're generating on it, I think, 70 million or so, which is just the comparison. Like, there's a huge, the margin is like super low. And so, how big can you actually grow? And it kind of like goes back into, do we want that provider to go that big? Because then you're just centralizing power with one player. And in my view, as more providers are going to come out, you're going to see some depression in the fees. So maybe that 70 million is just going to dip to like 35 million. It's still a nice business, but it's very difficult unless you're entering at a very attractive valuation to make a VC like return case for it.
So from a VC perspective, it's limited in terms of the opportunity. That doesn't mean it is limited in terms of the use case and the way other people can benefit from being in DeFi. So I wonder, Carmen, if you can explain, if you look out over the next 6 months about Nolus, what is it that you're excited about knowing that you're providing a use case?
Well, first of all, I pretty much like the comment about centralization. This is something that we really need to go around it. Because at least now for Cosmos, it has a couple of providers. Hopefully, the others would join. This would provide a decentralization that is essential, because this is what total value locked in those derivatives would come from different providers that provide a service that's really tested, bulletproof tested. And then for the use cases, it's essential that those providers are stable in terms of security. So we are using a derivative which always adds a layer of risk, if you either than using the actual asset. So this layer of risk actually needs to be covered by the providers, meaning providers need to be certain of their derivative, the liquidity is there, that the availability is there for us, for example, as a money market to really do liquidations, do transactions, swap assets, whatever that is.
That's interesting, and I think it would be very nice to hear what you at Nolus are going to be seeing over the next few months that fit with that narrative, right? Fit with the decentralization.
Well, first of all, we would try to add as many assets as possible, including co-liquid stake derivatives. In that way, people that are interacting with our protocol, that are using the money market, are able to really take what they desire in terms of asset, multiply it as terms of equity, but still have lower risk. So risk is essential. We're trying to lower the risk, although we give more as exposure. And this is true not only for liquid stake assets, but for all assets. And the availability to really go from asset to asset in a matter of 2 clicks, this is essential for the user experience. So the next 6 months is really building liquidity in terms of liquidity on our protocol, but also liquidity with different assets.
Right. And persistence, looking out at the rest of the year, you touched on some of the things that you're doing, some of the things you're looking at. So how does the rest of the year pan out for persistence?
Yeah, so in the last couple of months, we've really focused on delivering those like building blocks that are the enablers for liquid staking DeFi, and as we kind of tend to have the V1s, the first versions out there, of course, gonna keep on working on those to improve those. But for us, the next 2 quarters, I would say, so the next rest of the year is really going to be a focus on bringing in more developers to focus on building the use cases around like the primitives that we've built. Like we have a lot of interesting ideas, like leverage liquid staking is one, for example, certain yield strategies that you can run, vault products that can be built now. So for us, it's going to be a little bit more about the developer experience in the next 6 months. Really trying to bring live into like the ecosystem with the building blocks that are already there. Really focusing on bringing more developers and use cases, whether that's like on the chain itself through like smart contracts, or whether that's even through integrations with other protocols. So that's going to be the focus for the next 6 months.
Sounds exciting, yeah. So we've got more time for one question. Let's make it a quick one. Bringing it back about Cosmos And you know, if we're to leave today with the one message about why Cosmos and liquid staking, you know, when you're thinking that, what is it common that comes into your mind? Why liquid staking in Cosmos?
The technology is number one word in my mind, and liquid staked asset because this is the future where liquidity would eventually lie within Cosmos.
Jerome?
Tough question. Like, no, I think why Cosmos? I think why not? Like, let's reverse the question. No, I think technology, of course, and yeah, it's still so early, and I think there's a lot of things to be done and to be unlocked, which to me brings opportunity. So I do think like there's a huge opportunity in the Cosmos around liquid staking, and that's what I love about it.
And a final thought from you, Tomas?
For me, just like the number of chains that, like, you know, proof of stake chains that you can then build like really cool new products from, because, you know, I'm still envisioning that you're gonna have like liquid staking derivatives that are effectively indices for like different segments, you know, with different like risk return trade-offs and like payoffs. And I think, you know, that you cannot really get outside of Cosmos. So I think that's what's exciting.
Great, thank you, and thanks very much to the panel. It's been wonderful to have these different perspectives, so that we could learn and notice the trends. So a round of applause, please, for our panelists.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, thank you so.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.